Welcome to our Monday Live. We've got Drew, Eric, and Ian here. My voice sounds like I've taken up a hobby of smoking 7 packs of Marlboro Reds. It's a great time. Most of them are unfiltered. Guys, this is for some folks, this is going to be the first time they're getting the opportunity to hear from you guys post OU. I know there's been some great coverage already post game, and then we obviously had our show on Sunday, and then you were live today too, Eric. But just really quickly, I want to start with you, Ian. What just initial takeaways? I know we were talking a little bit about leaving some offense on the field, and maybe if you want to talk about that from Sark's perspective, maybe from his desire to get a few more points out of that game.
I think they definitely would have liked to have scored more. You could tell Sark was going for it with at least one 4th down call, a couple of double passes. So Sark clearly wanted what we all wanted, which was for them to pour on as much as possible. And it's really a shame that they couldn't do just a little bit more.
Is that a state fair corn dog?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess so.
Well,
I would have brought a wax cup beer if I knew we were doing that.
Do you buy in bulk, Ian, or how does that work for you?
Yeah, you can buy them frozen.
You can buy them frozen. Oh, great. That's so fun. Drew, did you have, again, what were some initial takeaways from you? We're going to talk a little bit about OU and then we can move on because this, we've got, let's call it a borderline scrimmage this week. I don't think anybody's too worried about it, but I think we owe the fans some little chat about it. So what were your initial thoughts on OU?
I think the thing that stands out for me is our defense. At the end of the day, we didn't know what we were going to deploy this year. We had some ideas, but we didn't know how it was all going to come together. I don't think anyone here lacked confidence on how it would look, but we didn't know what it was going to turn out to be. But this is a type of game you want from a great defense. Like there are years where we just give up garbage touchdowns or just allow field goals, even more so. When you can smother a team the way they did this weekend, I don't care who it is. That's exciting. Defense is what stands out to me from the turnovers to the physicality to playing for 60 minutes. I just can't wait to see these guys play again. This is a defense. Last year was fun from the standpoint of, yes, we knew we could stop the run, but this is different. I don't know if anybody else has said that yet out loud, but this feels different than it did last year. I can't wait this week to see how that is validated. But this defense is flying around. Our defensive back play has been incredible. I hate that we're losing Derek Williams. Just came back, and he impacted this game so heavily. But more than anything, coming out of this game, when you have a defense that can punish your rival like this and just make them hurt and show and prove that your program's at a different spot, our defense did it. So
what do we say? What do we say to the message board jockeys that Texas hasn't played anybody yet? How can you evaluate that defense? This is essentially the question that Elio is asking here. I know you laid out some of that, but what is it? What gives you the sense that we're going to be able to do this if we haven't played anybody yet?
Well, I think that's the best part, is because we have been watching. We know, we've seen the team. We're looking beyond the scoreboard, beyond the stats and all other things that even when someone gets yardage on us, even whether it be late in games or gets certain plays on us, we here, those of us who are watching the game and watching the team week over week, we see that there are good habits. There's good tackling. There's good coverage. There's not busted coverage. So if people, that usually comes from people who aren't watching the games, and they especially aren't watching this team. But anyone who has a pulse on this team, who's actually watching, can adjust, or at least they can evaluate on a curve, understanding and adjusting the expectations based on who the opponent is. So good thing is we still have doubters, but all of us and those who've been paying close attention, we know what's up. So we have a lot to be excited about, especially going into this weekend.
Usually don't see this level of domination unless the defense is really good. Like unless they had a style that like Michigan State used to be the most dominant defense until you played a certain style, and then they could be had. But Texas plays a pretty normal conservative style. Like they're just sitting back in base defense most of the time. So their level of dominance, I think it's reminding me of Michigan last year, where Michigan, they didn't play anybody for their first like 6 or 8 games or something. And they had this stretch where they went like multiple games where opponents couldn't even get into the red zone. And that translated because they won the championship with defense. And right now, Texas reminds me of that. They play differently. It doesn't look exactly the same, but just the level of pure domination, I think, is comparable.
Eric, this is obviously from our patron saint, Brett Nelson. He's curious when's the swag wagon pulling into town? When are people going to buy these hats?
He's got good timing. I went and found his address in my private messages today. His is in a box and ready to go. First one out the door. Hope to send that out tomorrow. UPS, Brett. Might take a little bit time to get to Utah. I don't know. Hopefully you have it on your head in time for the Georgia game.
Oh, that's lovely. And again, from Super Papi, he is curious from you, Ian. Can we start getting some signed photography? Something tasteful, maybe out to the fans. I think that would be really, really nice. Guys, we do have a great game coming up this week, and some of the things that Drew has been talking about is the idea that we've been watching this team for a very long time, and we want you to join us. Join us at Inside Texas. We are running a special right now. It's going to be just $1 for 7 days, the 7 days that leads you up to this Georgia game, and then it's 50% off your first year. You're going to get all the insights from the team here, as well as breakdowns of games in the future. But the beauty of this is you can also get on the On3 network and just go over to those Georgia Bulldog pages and just see what's being said over there. That's kind of fun sometimes if you can't sleep. All right, guys, we do have some questions here, and I want to get to those really quickly as soon as I take this banner off that you guys are hiding behind. One of the things, let's just move on if we can now, because I think the big concentration right now is on this Georgia game. And I'm just curious going into this, what are some initial thoughts? I mean, we've already had both press conferences today. This is a group of coaches that have a lot of mutual respect for one another, especially, and I think the highlight is going to be this idea between Sark and Kirby, offense versus defense. But what are some initial thoughts going into this, Eric? We haven't heard too much from you.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my thoughts are kind of tangential to what you guys were just talking about. Texas not really facing a real offense yet. You can still see the cohesion and the discipline, the athleticism and the speed of the defense, and you can project that onto a better offense. I'm with Drew and Ian on that for sure. I think we could see it was a different defense than the first week. It's kind of like we kind of talked ourselves into believing it before the season, just based on the parts that they assembled, another year of development. But then we saw it with our own eyes. So maybe we're in the confirmation bias period, but I don't think so.
I'm on
I think
camera,
it's going to
baby. Please come over. What do you need?
Yeah. All right.
Oh,
Yeah.
man,
Anyway,
actually,
so I think it is going to translate against Georgia and better wide receivers, better playing against a better quarterback. The best quarterback they've seen a lot of backups. They've seen a lot of guys that should be backups so far. But this is going to be the first time we see them matched up against a total team that has similar size, similar athleticism, similar culture development, all those other things. So this is it's a pretty even matchup. Perusing that Georgia board that you were mentioning earlier, they're certainly not overconfident. There's a lot of respect for Texas. I watched Kirby Smart's press conference, wrote an article about it today. He's got a lot of respect for Sark. Turns out that they're pretty decent friends. Seems like Sark has his friends with the coaches all over the place. They actually vacation together. He said that this Texas team reminds me of some of their best teams, the teams that were winning national championships. And so, it doesn't get much more high praise than that. But I'm looking forward to seeing the defense. I'm more of a defensive guy than offensive. I prefer it. I love watching defensive backs. They have good wide receivers, not great wide receivers. I see better wide receivers in practice every day. So I think the athleticism and the schemes are going to be there. But then they still got to go out and execute. And, I think they're also going to get an assist from the fans on defense. You'll probably see Georgia using some early timeouts due to crowd noise.
Eric, did he apologize for the shove, or did they just ignore it?
He actually got asked that question. One of the journalists went pretty straightforward with him, and he said that he had talked to Levy about it, and he had talked to the player in question, apologized, said in the heat of the moment he didn't even realize he did it. Who knows if that's true or not? But yeah, he addressed that for sure.
Yeah, that seems fine to me. Although I was hoping it would be like a week-long circus around them.
Yeah, no, he nipped it in the bud.
All right.
One thing that you should also think about it nipping in the bud is if you have any real estate needs. So we're going to hear from our friend Laura Baker. Hi, I want to tell you about Laura Baker. If you're looking for a new home in the 512 or even at this point, let's face it, 737 area code, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. As a member of the elite Andy Allen team with Keller Williams, Laura has helped Longhorns find the home of their dreams in Central Texas. Just ask our resident sex symbol, Ian Boyd, who moved all the way from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Laura can help you find what you're looking for in the 512, the 737, or even parts of the 254 and the 210. Just, give her a call at 512-784-0505. Her email is in the description as well as the rest of her contact details. She's a friend. Give her a call. Well, thank you for the super chats coming in. There's quite a few. I want to go to really quickly just to Brett Nelson because we're on the subject of just early thoughts on this Georgia game. We'll start with you, Ian. We've heard from Eric. I'd love to hear from you next, Drew.
I have pretty much the same thoughts as Eric. I think Georgia slipped last year. They no longer had all the big, overwhelming defensive tackles that had defined their championship run. They still had Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers, so they were still really good. But when they played Alabama in the SEC championship game, they were getting pushed around. And that's not the Georgia that was winning championships the 2 years prior. This year, they're still not – 1 year has not made that big of a difference. They're still not that big and imposing on the defensive line. They're very good. They're better than, 90% of college football, 95% of college football. But it's not like it was. And now they don't have Brock Bowers or Ladd McConkey either. And they look weaker at corner because Mississippi State really got after him in the passing game. And so I don't know. I wonder if part of what led to that Kirby Smart shove is that he knows that things are just not where they should be with Georgia right now, and they're slipping a little bit. So, yeah, I don't think they are as intimidating as we anticipated.
Anything from you, Drew? And again, this is just kind of the 30,000-foot initial thoughts on this. We're going to have a lot of coverage this week at InsideTexas.com as well as here on the YouTubes. But what are your initial thoughts there, Drew?
I don't know. I think the two things that I'm looking for this week, I'm looking to see how our defense responds this week and plays against Georgia. For me, I don't even care about our offense. I kind of know what to expect from them. Hopefully they can protect the ball and everything else and everything works out. But I'm anxious to see how our defense stands up this week. So that is where I think there is another thing that stood out to me this past week against OU that I'm wondering if you guys have noticed this or feel this way. Mike Bobo is the OC at Georgia. I felt this way against OU, and there's a couple other times where I've watched us play, and I'm like, do you ever wonder if the OC on the other sideline is trying to match up to Sark? Whether it's doing creative things or being aggressive or just trying to put his stamp on the game, or is he getting out of his game plan? Because there are certain times where I feel people do things out of character or do things, I don't know if it's because they're playing Texas, but I do feel like there's a Sark factor where offensive coordinators, hey, it's your chance to make your statement on this game. But with the defense that we have this year, it's harder for teams to really match up against Sark from an offensive side of things. So it's just I'm anxious to see how Georgia deploys their offense. Do they think that they can just come in and run what they run with a few tweaks, on both sides of the ball? But for the most part, the defensive side of things and watching how they call the game from an offensive side of things is really what I'm looking forward to. It's just hard for me to think beyond their offense versus our defense in this one.
Well, one thing to consider here. So points per game. This is Texas. 43.2. We're first in the SEC. Yards per game, 497 or 495.7. We're second in the SEC. Passing offense, fourth in the SEC, and rushing offense, fifth in the SEC. So I think one of the interesting things, and again, this is the fun week to join InsideTexas.com. If you haven't yet, do it now, because again, getting access to that Georgia information is really fun too. And the consensus over there is that Sark is going to hang 40 on him. So I wonder if what you're saying, Drew, is that, like, look, they know they got to score points, and maybe that takes them out of character. I don't know. I would imagine that a more disciplined, seasoned offensive coordinator wouldn't get into that mindset, but maybe it is. Maybe they are pushing. Any thoughts on that, fellas?
You know, he said something pretty interesting in his press conference. Kirby Smart did, where they were talking about wide receivers getting loose, Mississippi State wide receivers against them, and Mississippi State wide receivers are good. That's the strength of their team. A couple of those guys could play at Texas, so there's no shame in getting beat. But he said the way that they do it is entirely different than the way Texas gets their guys open. He made it sound like almost like they'd have a better grasp of it. He also said that Texas is very similar to what Georgia does. So it had me wondering if he felt a little bit of confidence based on those guys, practicing against similar schemes every day. It was just kind of interesting. He kind of said, Levy does stuff a lot different than Sark. I think he was kind of trying to explain it away that way. Still, you're going to have to run with these guys. Running with Texas wide receivers is quite difficult. Ryan Wingo's as good as any freshman wide receiver I've seen out there, and there's been amazing ones. Hopefully Isaiah Bond is fully healthy. That one we'll have to check further later in the week. But I like the matchup, Texas wide receivers versus their corners this year, and that's not something that we would have thought, when this game was scheduled originally. But that's where they're at. Texas has the best receivers in the nation, and Georgia is not up to their usual standard right now.
That strikes me as false bravado.
I wanted you to read that article and offer some thoughts, because it kind of stood out to me.
I mean, they are different in how they get guys open. But Georgia, for the last few years, has been the team that when they get Tennessee or when they get Levy, they shut it down. And they do it just by playing man coverage like they did Saturday. And they tried to do that Saturday and some other things, and they couldn't do it. So to me, it looks like they've slipped some. And then I don't think Sark is easier to cover than Levy. Levy makes it hard to get help on his receivers, but then they're just running like a smaller menu of routes. Sark is going to throw a lot more at them.
Yeah, that's one thing Kirby mentioned. He's gonna challenge their eyes and their discipline a lot more with motions and shifts. And right when you're watching the guy motion, you got another guy running right past you. Is what he said. It was sort of interesting to hear him say it. You should read that and offer some thoughts on that comment section.
We've got some really good questions coming in from the super chat, and I want to make sure that those get answered. And this first one's coming from Dante Payne. So we want to thank you, Dante. And he's asking about, obviously, look, this was the social media buzz was OU would much rather have to play against Ewers than Arch. Now the narrative is there. Arch has established himself as a highly competent college quarterback that can win football games. So now there's two on the roster. People are saying, do you want Arch? Do you want Ewers? This is going to be the narrative for a very long time. I think Sark has done everything that he possibly can to make this a non-issue. But the question here, Ewers is our guy. It's his team. However, did any of you for a second want Arch after Ewers in that first two drives? So I'm ready for the Arch era. And look, there was obviously some rust going into that, and that was been a discussion certainly on the board today about the health of Ewers, where he is. But as far as we know, we haven't heard anything otherwise. He's as good as he says he is. But what were your thoughts on that, Eric?
Not really. I mean, I was joking with the people behind me is, if it's not Ewers' day, they just throw in the other best quarterback in the game. But that's more tongue in cheek. Because of the defense and how not even zero dimensional OU's offense was, I wasn't really worried about it. You got to let your starter work through his issues. And, but I mean, everybody's excited for the Arch era. I join you in that excitement. Arch is just a really exciting talent, but, I'm content to see this Ewers play out his career. I was happy to see him go 2-1 versus OU, very close to being 3-0. Well, yeah, you got to, if he's injured, then Sark's going to have to you might have to make a tough decision at some point, because if he's playing like that because he's injured rather than just rusty, what are the chances it gets better against Georgia?
Yeah,
that would be a concern of mine. Sark's going to have to manage that if he does still have some lingering health issues. If it's just rust, then you ride out your guy, you ride with your starter, and let the chips fall.
We're going to throw this one to you, Ian or Drew. This is overall, where do you think the matchup is when we're talking about, is it the Georgia offense versus the Texas defense, or is it the other way around? What do you think is the matchup that's going to make the most difference in this week's game?
I think it's their offense versus our defense. I don't know what to expect from Kirby and that crew, but I think regardless of OU's offense, we faced a defense that is familiar with our offense, had the players and the talent, the disruption, the 2 weeks to prepare for our offense. So I don't anticipate we're going to experience anything we haven't seen before or we haven't been challenged with before. Anything that we experience on our offense, I think it'll be self-inflicted. Otherwise, it should run as it should run. What we don't know is just how our defense is going to respond. We know what to expect based on what we've seen, but more than anything, I think the matchup is our defense. If our defense can create turnovers, if our defense can leverage the crowd, if our defense can get to the passer, there are so many different opportunities that come in a game like this, especially at home. I mean, you get a false start on the first down. I mean, you're 1st and 15.
Yeah.
Any 5-yard penalty on defense turns into an opportunity. So that's where I'm looking to see us take advantage this week, have some fun this week, get to the quarterback this week, because I think our defense is where we'll make a name this season, but also we'll be able to show our dominance. It won't be our offense putting up points. If our defense can dominate, I think that's what I want to see, and that's really where I think will set us apart from everywhere else in the country.
I agree.
Oh, God. I was going to ask you to just disagree or something, Ian. God.
Well, I am going to watch for – I agree with Drew. I think this defense is kind of the offense is still getting the headlines, but I think the defense is really the main driver of this team, and they're the main reason why they've been winning by the margins they've been winning by and just dispatching teams so easily. So if they can do that against Georgia, then, you're really in business, and playing at home, that's a really good way to get this win. But I will be watching, of course. The offense versus Smart's defense is really interesting. I'm a little nervous about Quinn. I'm worried that he doesn't want to get hit. And so his footwork is regressing and he's not wanting to step into things because he doesn't want to take a shot to the oblique. But if that's the case, he might be able to overcome that with another week of just feeling better and just, getting more comfortable with, hey, this is how it's going to be if I take a shot at things.
Yeah, and also Sark knowing he has to protect him even more and get him in a rhythm earlier and probably get the ball out quicker and not as much drop back passing. Sark really kicked the crap out of Venables. It just didn't show up on the scoreboard. There were wide receivers all over the place, just wide ass open. That game could have been a lot worse. Sark owned Venables on Saturday. It didn't quite show up like we wanted to in the scoreboard. But if he's got another game plan like that, Texas is going to be in good shape. The defense is going to keep them in it, right? It's how many points do you think Georgia can score? More than 24? I'd be surprised.
Oh, all right. Well, we get into that really quickly. But again, Texas is hosting Georgia in our house. And if you want to make your house better, check out Luxe. This video is brought to you by Luxe Kitchen and Bath. Luxe has been offering high-end kitchen and bathroom remodels for 3 generations throughout the greater Austin area. With 5-star review after 5-star review on Google and Facebook, and an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau, you can put your faith in Luxe Kitchen and Bath's award-winning designers and skilled craftspeople to bring to life that dream vision of your special home. But that's not all. Luxe's all-star team provides full remodels, large additions, and even commercial build-outs as well. So call Luxe Kitchen and Bath at 833-358-LUXE today. Or visit luxekitchenbath.com to discover where quality meets luxury and begin the process of transforming your home. Get a free quote today by calling 833-358-LUXE. That's LUXE. Or by visiting luxekitchenbath.com. Link in the description. Eric, we're going to move over slightly to, and this I view this as a recruiting point of discussion, because what Bean here is saying is that Texas is in the phase of practice being harder than games because of the talent. And this is something that we've been on, obviously, for a while. You visit us here at InsideTexas.com, you'll understand that this has been something that Sark has been building with an SEC-style team in mind. And this is something that, obviously, that Kirby alluded to, again, in his press conference, was the idea of the progression of Sark's teams has also gone along with the progression of what's happening in the trenches. And this is a big recruiting weekend for Texas as well. And I'd love to, if you could, just lay out a little bit of what's going on.
Yeah, well, this kind of goes back to what we always talk about in spring ball, and especially August, is zero sum, where it's it's hard to tell what's going on, because is your offensive line good or is your defensive line bad? You just don't know based on practice reports. Except we started to see the D line and offensive line really round into form last year, so we could go into the offseason with a much clearer view of what to expect. Or if the D line is doing well against the offense, which we heard for a good bit of August. Then we can know that they're pretty good, because the offensive line is returning pretty much everybody other than Cam Williams, and we had high hopes for Cam Williams. So it's kind of the iron sharpens iron thing, where now that you've got got good edges going up against good offensive tackles, you got good wide receivers going up against good corners, you got good running backs trying to get loose against athletic linebackers, and everybody's making each other better, and that does help you recruit better. Guys want to get developed, and one way to do that is to go up against your equal every day in practice. So Sark has done a great job, and Kirby Smart did. He pointed that out. He said, Sark has gotten better in each of the 4 years. Well, it's no surprise that the trenches have gotten better in each of his 4 years as well. Maybe the defensive tackles aren't quite what they were last year, but they have not been a weakness by any stretch. They're still good. A little worried about next year, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But the trenches have gotten better every single year, and that's a huge part of the success that we're seeing. Really, and that's kind of Sark's emphasis. He knew he needed to build an SEC team. It was pointed out to him clearly by Arkansas. They underscored it. Sark took that game as an example and said, "I need the support to go build an SEC team." He had the support even despite going 5-7. And a few years later, here we are getting ready to play Georgia as the favorite.
I want to thank everybody watching on YouTube and certainly Twitter. And this is from Abel. I just want to throw this out to you really quickly, Eric, and invite Abel. Please come over to YouTube too and like and subscribe over there. It really does help us out. But what are any thoughts? Anything has changed right now on the status of Justice Terry?
Yeah, well, okay. So we knew he's coming in Friday. It turns out it's going to be an official visit. They've got some good selling points up their sleeve. They got some good examples up their sleeve. Guys that have come in and done well as true freshmen, that have also done well with NIL. That's a big factor if you're a 5-star playing a position where scarcity factors, like let's say, for example, just spitballing here, Colin Simmons at edge. Maybe they'll use that as a good example of what you can do at Texas to maximize everything in the Texas ecosystem, not just playing on the field, but you're in a giant marketplace in Austin, and there's ways that they can use that to their advantage. So I don't know if he's a lock for Georgia. That kid was committed to USC at one point. That at least demonstrates that he's somewhat willing to leave home. He decommitted, of course, so maybe he didn't want to leave home. But Texas is a lot closer. Texas is in the SEC. Texas has playing time to sell next season. He could come in and play as a true freshman. I think that will appeal to him. Take your shot. Shoot your shot here. Beat his home state Georgia Bulldogs in front of him, and show them everything that Texas has to offer, including the run of draft picks. They're going to have 6 D tackles drafted in three years, and some of that you could attribute to Bo Davis, but I would say a number of those were actually culture wins. Devondre Sweat specifically. The culture is a selling point, but also the development of Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins under Kenny Baker is a selling point as well. So shoot your shot, see what happens. I'll be curious to see what we're reporting on Sunday.
I want to thank Wayne for asking this question. So in his mind, our O-line blocked much better against OU. And to me, that is going to be, that is the key going forward. Their pass pro is A+. I'm just curious, and again, this is the early days. You're going to be able to catch Ian and Paul on deep dive, and a lot of breakdown is going to happen between now and Saturday. But what are our initial thoughts here, Ian, on O-line versus Georgia's defensive front?
It'll be a different sort of challenge in Oklahoma. I don't know if they're going to face a team that is harder to pick up in pass protection than Oklahoma, because they have really good pass rushing personnel this year in Norman. R. Mason Thomas, Grayson Halton, a defensive tackle, so on and so forth. But also their blitz package is really nasty, and they disguise a lot of stuff. And they were just getting stonewalled against Texas. Even they had 1 sack on the day. They had 5 last year. They got 1 sack. And if you rewatch it, it was like the second play of the game, and Ewers self-sacked. They blocked pretty well, and he kind of took the wrong way out and kind of wandered into pressure. So to me, that was an extremely positive sign. I think that's going to carry over against most every SEC team. I don't think that the gap in pass rush is there between Oklahoma and these other teams, except for maybe Texas A&M, maybe Kentucky. I don't think Georgia is going to be a step up in that regard. In terms of like moving them off the line of scrimmage, it'll probably be tougher than Oklahoma. So that'll be interesting to watch for sure.
What do you think? And I'll admit I haven't seen as many Georgia games this year, but will Georgia play straight up or feel the pressure to get gimmicky? And I'm wondering this question here, John, isn't alluding to what you were talking about earlier, Drew. This idea that maybe coaches are trying things that are a little outside of the norm for them.
I mean, they're going to do what they're confident in doing. At the end of the day, I think Texas's defense has shown, at least on film, that they're assignment sound. You can't just get away with an okie doke one way or the other. So why not, as Georgia, feel confident in what you do? Just make sure you do it well, you block well, you execute well, and you go about your business the way you expect to. I'm pretty sure Georgia is just like Texas. They go back and they watch film, and when they watch film, it's we weren't as good as we should be. We missed a block here. We should be better than the man across the line from us. And so it's not so much, and it could be, a bit more about assignment. But at the end of the day, a confident, fast, resolute player, and resolute in his assignment and what he needs to do, that's all Georgia needs and all Georgia wants to have going into this game. So that doesn't mean you won't have a wrinkle here or there when you can fit it in. But I think it's far more likely Texas will have surprises of sorts or things that we haven't shown yet against Georgia than it is that Georgia will have it against us. It's in our DNA more so than anything else, but also we're still trying to prove we can get there. So
right.
That's just how we're wired.
Yeah. If you're looking for consistency, one thing I would check out is our friend David McClellan.
I'm just going to say, guys, you probably need a fiduciary financial advisor. And I've got the guy for you. His name is David McClellan with Forum Financial. He works broadly and deeply with his clients as a financial life coach. And he should know something about coaching because he won several national championships as a swimmer for the University of Texas. He specializes in financial planning and has contributed numerous articles to Kiplinger on the topic of retirement tax bombs. So contact David today to be your fiduciary financial planner and schedule a 1-hour consultation to assess your financial situations. The free consultation is available, so just give him a call. The number is 312-933-8823. That's 312-933-8823. His email is also in the description below.
Getting into so what a lot of people don't know, and I'm probably sharing too much information, but Ian is a defensive coordinator. So if you were in this position here, Ian, do you think that Texas will run the flyover defense against Georgia?
I don't know exactly what he means by that. They have the 3 deep safety package that they run on third downs at Texas this year, but it's only a third down passing down package. It's something they get into when it's, it's third and a mile, second and a mile. That's not their MO on normal downs. And I don't think it's going to be their MO against Georgia. They probably play Georgia pretty traditionally. Georgia's they're like Texas. They're like single, double tight end. They want to run downhill, play action. Oklahoma did go 3 high, and then look how that went for them. Go watch every big run Texas had, and you'll see Oklahoma in 3 high getting mashed.
Ian, tell the viewers some of the downsides of Texas going with that look. There's trade-offs that you've talked about on text message and on the board before, but what are some of the trade-offs of why Texas doesn't do that?
Well, yeah. Okay. So the ideal, like first and 10, 3-down flyover defense, there's no edge on the field. And if he is, he's got to play like heads up on an offensive tackle or in a 5. It's hard to protect him in the run game. So you've seen teams get away with it, but it is not the optimal usage of Trey Moore, definitely not Colin Simmons. So you're marginalizing some of your best, the most freakiest athletes. So that's not that great. Your safeties in the ideal world in the flyover, your safeties are like downhill run-stopping menaces that are showing up unexpectedly to make big tackles. And Makuba and Taff are pretty solid in that regard. But I don't know if you want to do that on a regular basis. It's not like they're elite at that. Taft maybe would be elite at it if he were 205 pounds, but he's not 205 pounds. So I don't think it plays to their strengths. And, I mean, also, just why would Texas do anything differently on defense?
Yeah, that's a fair point. One of the questions, and this was discussed earlier today, Eric, in your live this morning, with Derek Williams' injury. And again, this is speculation, but how do you see this potentially going? And if you had to pick today, what do you see the defensive back position being going into this game on Saturday?
Yeah, and for a more detailed answer, I've got an article that's free on Inside Texas. I wrote today that the impact of losing Derek Williams for the season. He was having his good game, probably his best game so far of the season, unfortunately. Very talented player. Another run of bad luck for Texas on the injury front with him. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen. I'll have a much better idea in the next couple of days. They could shorten up the rotation and just play 3. Jelani McDonald. Jelani really jumped off the field to me on Saturday, playing more extended snaps than I think we've seen before. Taff, Makuba, you could play those 3. I mean, it wasn't until recently that you even subbed this much to take out your starters, so they can get by with 3, or they could sort of expedite the development of Jordan Johnson-Rebel and play him more. Maybe this isn't the week for it, but maybe down the road we'll see more playing time for him. They really like him. He's also worked at Star. One thing they could do, and maybe they would cross-train it just for an emergency situation, is Jahdae Barron back there. He did cross-train a little bit previously, but you don't really want to rob from cornerback to fix safety unless you absolutely have to. Because then the trade-off there is Jahdae Barron and Gavin Holmes at corner. And Gavin Holmes is fine. There's nothing wrong with him. He's a good player. But Barron's pretty damn good. So I think they're just going to shorten the rotation, especially for this week. You're going to want to play the guys that are the most comfortable and have already proven themselves the most. And I think that's, the first 3. I expect to see Jordan Johnson-Rebel a little bit more as the season progresses, though.
I'm going to throw this over to Drew and Ian. I'll let you discuss it. But Wayne Watson, again, thanks for the super chat. I see Texas in match advantages more than Georgia. And where are we in the plus category versus Georgia? Specifically, I think he's talking position groups, linebackers, D-line, O-line, quarterback, etc. Thoughts on that, Drew and Ian?
Ian, I'll let you lead on this one. I'm sitting here thinking.
Okay. I think Texas has a better offensive line than Georgia for the first time in I'm 7 years, something like that. When was that breakout Georgia season? 2017. So 7-8 years, maybe longer. That's a pretty big one. D line and linebacker, I think Texas is actually really competitive and maybe a little better than Georgia right now. Georgia also has young linebackers that they're playing, and they've had a tougher competition, but they have not posted the numbers of Anthony Hill or Leongo Lafau. Secondary, I think Texas is better. Wide receiver, Texas is better for sure. Running back, you would think probably Georgia. Tight end, maybe Georgia, although Gunnar Helm is it possible that Gunnar Helm is better than Jatavian Sanders?
Stop.
Yeah.
Yes.
All around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Kirby Smart talked about him. I kept it out of the article because I'm going to write one about Helm in the morning. But Kirby Smart offered a lot of praise for Gunnar Helm and also Sark's usage of him. That'll be a free article tomorrow. So go to Inside Texas again in the morning. You should be going there every day, pretty much throughout the day.
That's an easy. People are afraid to say things like that, but yes, he is.
In terms of position groups, anywhere that you want to call Ian an idiot, or maybe he messed something up, or he said something dumb there.
I think this is
No,
the
he didn't
wrong
say
way to
anything.
look at it because the linebackers aren't going up against the linebackers. The D line's not going up against the D line. You got to look at Georgia's strengths versus Texas's, and Georgia's D line versus Texas's offensive line. Who has the matchup advantage there? Probably go Texas, at least as far as pass blocking. Maybe run blocking is a little different, but Texas stacks up favorably. We know that. There's a reason they're favored. But what if it comes down to who's the better quarterback on Saturday? And that's where they can really compete.
Yeah, the only thing that stands out to me is, especially going into this week, coming out of last week, I don't know how Leonga Lafau getting more snaps at linebacker.
Yeah.
And what they can do with Ant Hill right now, that factor in the middle of our defense being as physical, as fast, and as dialed in and athletic, there are some things we didn't get to really fully experience this week because it didn't feel as necessary against Oklahoma, that I think those two are going to be tested this week. Our linebackers should have a challenge this week, but also I think our best linebacker on the team, who's now going to get starters reps, will have a chance to shine this week at home.
One thing that Kirby or Coach Smart mentioned was, when asked about the Texas defense, he immediately went to speed and size, which again, I think sometimes we kind of take that for granted. Wow, these are Division I college athletes. Of course, they're going to be fast. Of course, they're going to be huge. But this is coming from a coach of Georgia, who is very familiar with fast defenses. And I think it's what he offered was a lot of praise today that I honestly, at least to me, I don't know how you feel about this, Eric, but watching his press conference, it didn't feel like false praise. It felt very much like he was talking about his buddy's team that happened to be pretty darn good.
Yeah, it sounded authentic, and I mean, it should be authentic because it's it's what we're all seeing too. It's they are big up front, they are athletic, and where you need speed, they've got. I mean, the team speed we saw. We're not talking enough about it. You could probably make an article just on the team speed. Silas Bold in the open field is a blur. Anthony Hill, one of my favorite plays of the game was him chasing Hawkins out of bounds when he came from deep to get that done. The team speed is phenomenal. Colin Simmons adds a whole different edge or a whole different miles per hour off the edge. I mean, their speed, and Leonga plays very fast because he thinks fast. Taft plays fast. That blitz, if you time a blitz as well as Michael Taft does, you could be a whole lot slower than Taft was and still get to the quarterback. That was easy money right there. Anthony Hill on his sack, just gently laying the quarterback down. That cracked me up. They are just fast. It's a fast team. It's a physical team, athletic, disciplined. I mean, yeah, that's why I could sit here and talk about the defense all day long. But they are big and fast. Sark has done a great job rebuilding the roster, and where he needed to go get a portal guy like Makuba they had to address speed at safety last year was one of their major question marks in the offseason. So you just go get Andrew Makuba, who doesn't lack for speed and range at all.
If we were to look at this, Ian, who has been successful against Georgia and why?
Really just Alabama this year, right? I can't think of another game where Beck didn't look pretty darn good. I mean, they only lost one game last year, and he was actually pretty good in that game. And I have not done a full deep dive into Georgia yet, but when they played Alabama's been a heavy man coverage team this year. And I think that when Alabama matched them up, and Georgia doesn't have Elad McConkey or Brock Bowers to just go beat his guy, that it kind of monkey wrenched their offense. And then they still ended up finding offense late in that game, and Carson Beck let them back. So there's a lot for me to look into there. But
you can watch the Kentucky game, as AR points out here. They only score 13, right? 13-12, I think they won.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Kentucky also probably challenged them, I think.
Yeah, he did not have a good game. His stat line was bad, but what I saw that game, he was uncomfortable.
Well, this is coming up a lot, and this is what we talked about earlier in the broadcast, but I want to bring it up because I think it's something that's very important. And we're going to go to our friend, Mr. McGee, or Mrs. McGee. I don't know, Mr. McGee, person McGee. I don't know how anyone misses that Texas hasn't faced a top 100 offense yet. Now, if I will, Mr. Mrs. McGee, every day in practice, they're currently facing the number 1 offense in the SEC. Yards per game, number 2. Rushing offense, number 5. And passing offense, number 4. Now, am I coming in going to say this, that we're going to blow the doors off anybody? No. Have they faced anybody in live ammo that's going to be as good as Georgia? Absolutely not. But I don't think we're totally off base here saying that this is a very good defense. All right, guys.
Everyone says this every year about whatever the top-ranked team is. It's like, oh, they ain't played nobody yet. And sometimes that's true, and they play somebody and they get exposed. And then a lot of other times it's not. And the people that are like, oh, they're just beating up on cream puffs, and then they get them, and then they get smacked around. So
this guy's over here shadowboxing himself. What the hell is he even talking about?
I don't even know what he's doing.
No, listen. You know what?
Thanks for the history lesson, dude. We haven't been watching at all. Thanks a lot, man.
But this is why this is the great question, Spiffy McGee, because you're right. That's why I'm excited about this week.
It's a fair point.
The question is, are people like Spiffy McGee going to continue to move the goalpost after this week? Are they going to continue to redefine what good looks like? Because at the end of the day, that's how it goes when you're the number 1 team. I know we feel it when we're Texas. It's like, oh, their schedule isn't good enough. And then once we play the team, well, they're going downhill. Every team we play against this year, we're going to catch them on an off weekend. They weren't great. They had injuries. There's always going to be something. That's also why I think it's important for Texas to continue to show up and play the way they're playing, because you don't give people like this any validation, because Texas is good on defense. Now it's time to show up and play against Georgia and show that it does translate. Now, I know people use kind of a different point. They practice against them an everyday thing. It's one thing to practice against a great offense. But I will tell you, in my practices, we didn't go. There were probably 5 practices in any given off season where we went full-fledged live against VY.
Yeah.
It wasn't happening. And so the standards were just different. You didn't get a decent feel. You never did good. I mean, when you did get on good, you did it inside drill or run drills and those things. This team is dialed into competition more than any team I ever played a part of. So it's one thing to have top talent that you have to face. It's another thing to actually face that talent, to actually be held to a standard, to have the tracking and all the different things they have during practice now that we didn't have when I played. It sees how fast you're running, what your effort is, if you're getting fatigued. Like, there are ways to measure those things in practice, and this team challenges themselves, offense and defense, against each other, ones-on-ones, to do that every day. So it's one thing to have great players. It's another thing to challenge them in practice and hold them accountable. We need more people like Spiffy McGee saying these things this week. This is all – I can't wait.
Well, it is, and this is going to be a great week. We do, and genuinely, when we say this, I'm with Drew on this. I love having Spiffy's commentary and point of view on this. I think it's great. That's what the game is for, right? We're going to get to see the opportunity to see that on Saturday. I can tell you that this is a game that I am excited about. I'm nervous about, guys. We're playing Georgia. I mean, let's not. This is a major game. We're get to do it at home. It's an SEC game in the league. This is fantastic. We're really excited about it. We're excited to have you. We are going to have, like I said, a lot of coverage this week. Be sure and check our morning lives. Those are going to be with Homer and tomorrow is Paul. Then we're going to have Ian, and everybody's going to break everything down. We've got our Wednesday night lives. We've got our deep dives. We've got our roundtables, and then we've got our pregame all this week. So there's a lot coming at you. Please go ahead and join us at InsideTexas.com. Like, subscribe. That really does help here. We are well over the 10,000 mark now. I think we just broke 14,000. So we really appreciate everybody being a part of building that with us. We've tried to do this, unlike, some baseball World Series home run championships naturally, but we're doing it, so thank you for that. And join us when you do it. All right. Hook 'em. Bye-bye.